everyone, it's Lisa. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card with the brand new stamp set from the Stamps of Life. It's called Floaties2Stamp, and there are these 3 adorable pool floats and several sentiments. This is the club set for the month of July, and there are matching dies to go with this set. So you have these 3 cute little pool floats and several sentiments floating by to say hi, fun in the sun, hello, enjoy life, happy birthday, happy summer, just keep swimming, hi, and let your troubles float away. Now the floating by to say at the very top, it has a couple of dots at the end, so you could say floating by to say hi or floating by to say hello. So I'm going to go ahead and make a card, and I'm going to start out by doing some coloring of my stamped images. I went ahead and stamped several images onto some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth cardstock, and I'm coloring these up with my Copic markers. I did stamp these out with my Spectrum Noir Noir Black Finesse ink, which is an alcohol-proof ink, which you need to stamp your images with an alcohol-proof ink if you're using alcohol markers, and you need to use the special alcohol-proof cardstock as well. So I will link all these products in my blog, so watching this on YouTube, go down to the description box and you will see a link to my blog, and you can hop over there and see links to all the products that I'm using in this video, and you will also see all of the colors that I'm using as well. Now I did stamp out several images and some a few different times. I always like to do that a couple different times in case I make a mistake. But I'm only going to color up the 3 floats that are in this stamp set. You'll see above the stamp image that I'm coloring right now, there's another pool floaty, and that's on another stamp set that you will see in an upcoming video. It is an add-on to the Floaties2Stamp, so you'll make sure you want to check that out. That is will be over at the Stamps of Life website, and the video for the duck float will be coming up soon on my YouTube channel. Anyway, so I'm coloring these up, and I am going to go ahead and let you finish watching my coloring, and I will be back once I finish coloring these images. I finish coloring up these images, I just use my shadow dies and I die cut all of these out. And I'm going to be making a slimline card with you today, and I have a card layer which is cut with the Bristol Smooth cardstock. That's what I like to use when I do some ink blending. It measures 3¼ by 8¼ inches. Next, I'm taking my square die. This is just from the square die set. This is the 2½ by 2½ inch die, and I'm measuring it so that it is 1/4 inch from the left side of that paper. And I am going to just mark with my pencil where the 1/4 inch mark is on the left side of that die. And then I'm going to come on over to the right side and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to measure 1/4 inch from the edge of that paper on the right, and I'm going to mark that where the die starts. I'm also marking, actually marking both sides. I come back over to the left side and I mark both sides. So there's going to be a mark on the left and right just so that I know where to position that die, because I'm going to be running this through my die cut machine. Then I need to have a die cut out of the middle. So I'm just putting my die between those two pencil marks on my page. And I do this just so that I can make sure that that middle square will fit and it will look even when it's spaced out, because I'm going to die cut 3 squares out of this top layer. So I start with the left side and I position my die between those two pencil marks, add some washi tape, and I'm going to run this through my die cut machine. When that comes out of the die cut machine, I just pull that die away and do the same thing on the right. So position the die between the two pencil marks, run it through the die cut machine. Then for the middle, I'm just going to take my die and I'm going to position it so that it is in the middle and there's equal space to the left and right of that die. And when that comes out of the die cut machine, I just erase all of the pencil markings and I'm ready to go. Next, I'm going to take out my glass mat and I am going to just put some tape on the back side of this die cut piece, and I'm going to attach that to my glass mat. I'm also going to be using my grid stencil. This grid stencil came with the windmill class kit, and I'm using this because I want this to look like a pool deck, and I think using the blueberry ink with this grid stencil will give me that effect. So I'm just ink blending some of the blueberry ink onto this die cut piece, and once this comes off, you'll see how cool this looks. I really love the effect that this gives. So my stencil's only so long, so I do as much as I can, and then I'm going to have to reposition the stencil. Just move it down, make sure that it is still aligned with all of those squares, and just continue ink blending it. So when I finish with that, look how cool that looks. That's going to be my top layer for my card. These stencils are super easy to clean. You could just wipe them down with a paper towel and some water. So I just spray some water on my stencil, wipe it down with a paper towel, and all that ink comes right off. So next I'm taking another piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock. This is measured by 2 3/4 by 7 3/4, and I'm just putting some pool ink on that. That's going to be the background layer where it's going to look like the water of my pool. So again, this is the Pool Stamps of Life ink that I'm just throwing on the background, and I'm just adding more and more ink because I want it to look a little bit darker. Next, I take a piece of blueberry cardstock and I cut the blueberry layer down to 3 5/16 by 8 3/8, and I pop that pool looking background right on top of that. And you can see that the stenciled background is going to go right above that. And as I'm putting it on there, I noticed that that blueberry cardstock layer in the background, it's not wide enough. So I'm going to have to trim my stenciled paper down, but I'm not going to do that quite yet. First, I'm going to take my stenciled piece of cardstock and I'm going to put glue on the back side, and I'm going to adhere that down to a piece of acetate because this is going to be a shaker card, so we need to put acetate on it in order to keep those shaker bits inside. So once I add my acetate, and I just use my scissors to trim off the excess acetate. So next I'm going to take these layers. You can see that as I put the stenciled background on top of the blueberry, it's just a little bit too wide and the blueberry doesn't show up as much as I'd like. So I'm taking my paper trimmer out and I'm just going to trim off just a smidge on the left and on the right side. Just make sure that they are even on both sides. I can't give you exact measurements, just make sure that they are even. Just trim off, as much, as little or as much as you need to. And then I'm going to take some foam adhesive. These are just some leftover foam squares that I had in my stash. And I just cut them down and I am going to adhere them to the back of the stenciled background because I need to make sure that the shaker bits are held inside each square. So I'm putting the foam adhesive around each one of the 3 squares. If you don't put the adhesive foam in the middle, then you're going to have this just super long rectangular shape where all your shaker bits, you're going to just need to fill it in with a whole bunch of shaker bits because it's just going to be too big of a shape. Whereas here, when you do it with each of the 3 squares outlined in foam, you only need to put a little bit of shaker bits in each square, if that makes sense. So I go ahead and put my foam there, and then I take my sequins, and I'm using some of these similar colors to the colors that I chose in my inks and my paper, and I am putting them on the actual cardstock layer. I'm not putting them inside the foam. They need to be on flat on the table. So just add the sequins that you want in each square and make sure that they are contained. Just kind of keep putting your foam piece back on top to make sure that they are contained within those squares. And after each one of those 3 sections has all of my shaker bits in it, just take off the adhesive backing on your stenciled piece and then pop that right over top of the card layer. Next, I'm going to take a piece of the white cardstock and I'm stamping out "Floating by to say hi" with some black ink, and then once that's stamped out, I will just trim down this cardstock just to form a nice rectangle. These are 2 separate stamps, so the "Floating by to say" will be a rectangle in itself, and then the "hi" will be a cutout by itself as well. Next, I'm going to use a piece of blueberry cardstock, and I'm just going to trim a little cardstock border around each one of those stamp sentiments. And then after I've cut those out, I will adhere the white cardstock to the blueberry layer with just some liquid glue. Next, I position everything how I want it to appear on my card, and I start by adding my sentiment. "Floating by to say hi" is actually up there at the top, and I should have zoomed this out so you could see the whole thing. I'm sorry that it's being cut off. And then I just started adhering my little pool floats, 1 in each square, and then the "hi" is going to be towards the bottom. And after I've glued everything down and shaked my card a little bit, I realized that I probably should have added more sequins in there because these pool floats do take up quite a bit of that squared space. So definitely should have added some more sequins. I am putting this on a Slimline card base, and my Slimline card base, it's an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that's cut down to 8.5 by 7, and then I score it at 3.5 inches. So it ends up being 8.5 by 3.5, and that layer is just glued onto the card base. I do take my Spectrum Noir clear glitter pen and just add some glitter to all of these floats. Just think it adds a nice shimmer to that. I don't know if you can see it there in the video, but it does add a nice shimmer to it. And then I take a couple of these sequins and I just glue them down to the front of the card. Not too many. I think I just do maybe two there on the front just to add some more bling. And that will complete this card. I really love how it turns out. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.